Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Maria Hatziolis, and I will be your moderator for today's high-level panel on leveraging the ocean as our greatest ally in combating climate change. We have a full lineup of outstanding speakers on this first day of COP30 in Belém, and I'm pleased to see that we have a healthy virtual audience in attendance. But before we get into the substance of today's session, a few housekeeping announcements. Today's event offers simultaneous translation through Wordly. You'll see a pop-up window on your screen, and this will invite you to select your preferred translation language. If you don't wish to use translation, simply ignore the pop-up box, click X in the top right corner of the app, and hide the feature. Please also refer to the program notes for bios of today's speakers, as I won't have time for detailed introductions, unfortunately. We have a packed agenda today and limited time for a formal Q&A, so I'd like you to encourage all attendees to submit questions for our panelists in the Q&A box throughout the session. So panelists will either be able to respond in a written way to your questions on a rolling basis, or they could choose to respond live. We might not have time to address all of your questions, so we hope that you will indulge some patience here, but please do use the chat feature of our virtual Ocean Pavilion if you want to continue a dialogue with one of the speakers or other exhibitors throughout the course of the COP30 using the Ocean Pavilion platform. I also won't have the luxury, unfortunately, of thanking everyone behind the scenes who has worked so diligently to bring this esteemed panel together, but I do want to single out Dr. Miriam Balgos, Executive Director of the Global Ocean Forum, and Ms. Katie Mitchell, Policy Analyst at the Forum, for making this event possible. And now it's my pleasure to serve as the moderator of today's session. I recently joined the Global Ocean Forum as a board director. Although I'm a marine ecologist by training and at heart, most of my professional career has been devoted to helping ensure that ocean and marine ecosystems are part of the equation to achieving sustainable economic development. It's been an uphill battle, especially at institutions with a human and land focus, but it's one that has been successfully waged with a deeper understanding of the ocean's contribution to the global economy and the hundreds of millions of people who depend on ocean goods and services for their livelihoods, food security, and well-being. The theme of today's session is the central role of the ocean in fighting climate change. As one of the panelists in last week's forum noted, there is no path to a good climate outcome without a healthy ocean. The ocean and the services it affords in regulating the climate, providing vital life support and outstanding biodiversity, and allowing humanity to develop and thrive during the most stable geological period in human history, is now under siege. Johan Rockström and colleagues at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research note that the Earth is already hurtling toward climate chaos. This, they say, is the result of failed foresight, political inaction, unsustainable economic systems, and misinformation. Today, we'll be talking about some of the ways to overcome these system failures in governance, political will, environmental justice, financial investment, and information as they relate to the ocean. How do we use this information about the planetary emergency we face on the one hand, and the ocean as perhaps our most powerful ally in meeting the existential threat of climate change, to catalyze the collective action at the speed and scale we need? Session speakers have been asked to keep in mind the COP30 Presidency's 3 priorities. 1, strengthening multilateralism. This includes not only policy alignment with the Paris Agreement, but also mobilizing the necessary financing to meet its objectives. 2, connecting the climate regime to people's daily lives. We must win hearts and minds by making clear to civil society the connections between the climate, ocean, biodiversity nexus, and human welfare. And 3, accelerating climate implementation, perhaps the most important of all. Time is running out. We are not on track to bend the emissions curve at the rate we need to avoid catastrophe. Pulling back from this dangerous trajectory will require accelerated and collective action on all fronts. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Jasdeep Randhawa, who is the Ocean Lead at the UNFCCC Secretariat. Ms. Randhawa will speak to us about increasing ocean ambition in NDCs as countries assemble today to pledge their commitments to meeting the targets of the Paris Agreement. Jasdeep, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maria. Good afternoon, everyone from Berlin. On behalf of the UNFCCC Secretariat, I thank the Global Ocean Forum and partners for the opportunity to present on the ocean under the UNFCCC process and congratulate on the opening of the virtual Ocean Pavilion. The science is clear. The ocean is essential to our efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Yet, it is also being profoundly impacted by these very changes, undermining its ability to regulate the Earth's climate. Parties under the UNFCCC have recognized the importance of protecting the ocean and its ecosystems in both the Convention and the Paris Agreement, which underscores the critical role of conservation of marine ecosystems and protection of biodiversity. Since 2019, the Conference of Parties has acknowledged the ocean's pivotal role in climate action. This includes integrating the ocean into the work plans of relevant UNFCCC constituted bodies and encouraging parties to strengthen ocean-based action in their national climate goals, including the nationally determined contributions or the NDCs. A key outcome at COP27 was the establishment of the mandated Ocean and Climate Change Dialogue to be facilitated by co-facilitators that would be biannually selected by parties. The outcome of the first global stocktake commends the Ocean Dialogue and encourages parties to continue strengthening ocean-based action as appropriate, including scaling up ocean-based mitigation action. Now, the Ocean Dialogue has since become a crucial platform for exchanging knowledge, strengthening partnerships, and enhancing collective ocean-based climate action for both parties and observers. To date, the dialogue has exchanged more than 800 ocean-based mitigation and adaptation solutions from the local level and regionally, while addressing a wide range of thematic areas such as fisheries and food security, ocean-based technologies, climate finance, marine biodiversity, conservation, coastal resilience, and blue carbon ecosystems. In line with the vision of the co-facilitators of the 2025 Ocean Dialogue, accelerating sustainable ocean-based climate action by driving implementation, this year's dialogue focused on ocean-based measures in NDCs, ocean climate biodiversity synergies, and the ocean under the global goal on adaptation. Cross-cutting themes included means of implementation with an emphasis on finance and science. This year's dialogue has once again demonstrated how critical ocean-based climate action is for achieving the Paris Agreement goals and following up on the outcome of the first global stocktake. The dialogue emphasized the urgency of integrating ocean-based mitigation and adaptation measures in the new NDCs and the contribution they can deliver for the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal and in building resilience to climate change. Parties were encouraged to include and implement ambitious ocean-based measures and strategies in the new NDCs. Regarding the integration of the ocean across all relevant thematic targets of the Global Goal on Adaptation, the dialogue recommended indicators that capture ecosystem integrity, connectivity, and resilience. Aligning the indicators with existing multilateral frameworks, such as the Convention on Biological Diversity, can reduce duplication and maximize impact. For COP30, parties may wish to consider how these indicators can ensure ocean-based adaptation is visible, measurable, and well-resourced under the Global Goal on Adaptation. This year's dialogue has also underscored the importance of international cooperation and highlighted the growing momentum for synergistic action between ocean climate and the biodiversity agendas. The dialogue welcomed the 2025 UN Ocean Conference and its outcomes that reaffirms the ocean climate biodiversity nexus. The ratification of the BBNJ agreement provides a critical opportunity to advance integrated ocean governance supporting climate ambition. Across all these discussions, one message resonated strongly. Science, finance, technology, and capacity building are the critical enablers of ocean-based climate action. The dialogue underscored the need for finance that is predictable, accessible, and targeted to those who need it the most, the developing countries. Blue finance must match the ambition being asked of parties to deliver in the new NDCs. Now, the 2025 dialogue and its outcomes also comes at a time when there have been several watershed moments for the ocean. First, at the UN Ocean Conference, world leaders issued a strong united call for urgency, sending a clear message that full implementation of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement, especially efforts to limit the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, is essential to securing a healthy, resilient, and productive ocean. The convening of the Ocean and the Climate Dialogue was also welcomed by the parties, and the Blue NDC Challenge was launched by France and the COP30 Presidency. Second, in the new NDC cycle, parties have reported a significant increase in ocean-based climate action, as stated by the NDC synthesis report of the Secretariat. To date, 80% of parties with a new NDC have reported an ocean-based component, a 40% increase from the previous NDCs, of which 82% have included ocean-based adaptation measures and 50% have included ocean-based mitigation measures. These statistics clearly demonstrate that ocean is no longer on the sideline, but is now recognized as an essential ally in the fight against climate change. Third, the launch of the action agenda by the COP30 Presidency and the inclusion of the ocean as one of its axes demonstrates the recognition of the ocean as a platform for channeling global cooperation and coordination for shifting the Paris policy cycle from design to delivery. So how can we really use these outcomes for COP30? First, the Ocean Dialogue's key messages, including considerations for COP30, directly provides an entry point into the relevant agenda items at COP. This is the global goal on adaptation, the finance items, NDCs, and international cooperation. I do encourage you all to participate in the special event on the Ocean Dialogue that is being convened by the co-facilitators on 13 November, which will be an opportunity to discuss how the ocean can be included in COP30. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasdeep. That was a very, very comprehensive wrap-up of the success of the Ocean Dialogue in actually increasing ambition to incorporate ocean into climate change action. That's very good news. Our next speaker is Ms. Lorelei Picour, Executive Director of Ocean and Climate Platform and the co-focal point for the ocean and coastal zones in the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action. Lorelei is also an Edinburgh Ocean Leader, an organization which I am very proud to have been a part of for many years. Lorelei, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria, and good morning, good afternoon to you all. Also echoing my thanks to the Global Ocean Forum for bringing all of us together. And as we celebrate the 10th year anniversary of the Paris Agreement, I want to start with good news. I don't know how many of you actually followed the World Leaders Summit, but the second speaker was the special envoy for COP30 on the ocean. So we made it through. It may have taken us a decade, but as my colleague Jasdeep explained, the ocean is now very well recognized as part of the solution in tackling the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. So that's the first piece of good news. As we head to Belém, we know that we have a role to play, and we know that the ocean will be elevated throughout COP30. As Jasdeep mentioned, one of the key topics that will be discussed at COP30 is the revision of national strategies. And we already have a group of countries that have joined the Blue NDC Challenge, making sure that they integrate ocean-based climate solutions in the national strategies. What I want to talk to you about today is the other side of the coin, is the mobilization of non-state actors. And what the presidency of Brazil has done for the very first time is to elevate the action agenda. So this compilation of solutions and initiatives carried by non-state actors at the same level of the negotiations. So we have the negotiations and the action agenda, and all together, they bring the ambition for COP30. And I was very honored to be appointed co-chair of the Secretariat Group on efforts to protect and preserve marine and coastal ecosystems, which means I had the pleasure of bossing around about 30 initiatives over the last 3 months to make sure that we come up with a collective plan to deliver by 2028. It will not be a surprise to you all, but we are not on track to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement. So what the presidency has told us, the ocean community, as well as all the stakeholders that are involved in developing these solutions is to come up with a series of actions and recommendations that can be implemented between now and 2028, so the next global stocktake, to course correct. And that's what we've been doing. And it's been released recently on the Climate Champions website, as well as the UNFCCC website, what we call the Blue Package. The ocean community has one major advantage. We know how to rally together behind one common objective. And in the last few years, we've been working collectively, aligned with the strategies from parties, of course, at developing a portfolio of solutions, which is science-based, ready to deploy, and need to be accelerated. That's the ocean breakthroughs. And they run across 5 high-impact sectors that can deliver for nature, climate, and people. Those 5 sectors are decarbonizing the shipping industry, and I know you'll hear more in a little bit, scaling up renewable energy, marine conservation, of course, aquatic foods, and coastal tourism. Across these sectors and many more, ocean-based climate solutions can represent up to 1/3 of the emission cut that we need by 2050. So our objective with the Blue Package and with civil society at COP30 is to voice the ocean as a solution and making sure that we can collectively address these challenges by integrating these solutions in NDCs, but also redirecting the financial investment to make sure that they can be implemented. COP30 has many names: the Nature COP, the Implementation COP, the People COP, but it's the turning point that we actually need to move from global ambition to implementation. And that can only be done with people at the cornerstone of this implementation. I will stop here in the interest of time, but make sure that you ask any questions. I'll be delighted to answer any of them. And for you coming to Belém, we have an insane ocean agenda, so be there on the 17th and then 18th to celebrate our victories together.
Thank you, Lorelei. That was really excellent news to hear about the Blue Package and the progress of the ocean and climate dialogue in bringing the ocean front and center of the conversation and the toolbox of solutions that we need to accelerate climate action. Our next speaker is Ms. Susan Gardner, who is Director of Ecosystems at the UN Environment Program in Nairobi. Her talk will be Protecting and Restoring Coastal Ecosystems. Ms. Susan Gardner, please have the floor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be joining you all from Nairobi and to be part of this virtual ocean pavilion. It's a space I think that's really important to give us this chance to celebrate connection. Because when we think about these connections that we need to achieve those goals, to stay on track, like Lorelei was saying, we see that in our coasts. It's how we can feel that connection across land and sea and people. If we look at our coastal ecosystems, whether we're talking about mangroves or seagrasses or coral reefs, they're some of the most powerful natural climate solutions on the planet. I mean, mangroves alone storing more than 6 billion tons of carbon. And you can hear a lot more of those kinds of data points throughout this discussion in this pavilion. These are like our first line of defense against storms. They help millions of people build their lives, build and support their livelihoods. Yet we know that, like Lorelei said, we are not on track. They're vanishing faster than we can bring them back. We need immediate action. For example, we need immediate action with coral reefs. They could disappear within our lifetime. As seawater temperature rises, reefs are vanishing. We know this. And coastal communities that require these reefs are losing their food security. They're losing jobs. They're losing their natural protection from climate impacts. But we also know that we can reverse these vicious cycles. And this is where multilateral collaboration matters more than ever. We have examples like the Global Fund for Coral Reef that shows us how to do this, what it looks like, strengthening connections, bringing together governments and UN agencies, philanthropies, and the private sector all together on a shared mission to protect reefs and to build coastal resilience. It's for biodiversity, it's for the ocean, it's for people. So you look at an example like in Fiji, where the fund has supported community-based shark conservation initiatives. and that actually increase both sharks and fish species. So it's creating tourism around scuba diving, creating a lot of jobs, channeling hundreds of thousands of dollars to local communities that helps build resilience to adapt, resilience of this community to be able to adapt to rising sea levels and the challenges in front of them. When these ecosystems degrade, we're losing the ocean as our greatest ally in combating climate change. And people's lives are disrupted. People's families are disrupted. As a result of floods and storms, every day there's about 20,000 children, and mostly in coastal areas, who are forced away from their homes, who are experiencing their schools closing, clinics stop functioning, their food sources are destroyed. And these children are more likely then to drop out of school. They're going to face malnutrition. They're going to suffer more likely to diseases like cholera and dengue. So to combat these devastating trends, we need sustainable blue economy approaches that actually put people first and strengthens climate resilience. I was recently in Thailand visiting one of our projects on Sichang Island, where in order to rebuild their crab stocks, fisher folks came together and actually created crab banks. So they're protecting pregnant crabs. And until they're young or large enough that they can actually be released safely to the sea. So what you get is better catch and you get higher incomes. And it works because you have communities leading these approaches. These are models where you're helping build economies, you're helping build biodiversity, and these are models of these connections that also demonstrate success in how we have to approach connecting the resilience in climate vulnerable species with people's livelihoods. So to improve the resilience of climate shocks, we've been mentoring we at UNEP have been mentoring more than 40 small eco-enterprises, particularly those that are run by youth and women, for example, in St. Lucia. We're supporting the Rizal Afro-Caribbean community in Colombia. We're helping to develop sustainable aquaculture and organic farming. Our expertise and experience with these projects confirms that nature and climate solutions have to be connected. And that same spirit of connection is essential for our approach to meeting our commitments under all the multilateral agreements. So whether that's the GBF or the Paris Agreement or the SDGs, we have to connect them. We have to connect our actions on all of them. And ecosystem restoration is a fantastic example. Earlier this year, you heard several references to the UN Ocean Conference. We awarded 3 community-led world restoration flagships. All 3 of them were blue flagships. They were showing how to protect and revive coastal ecosystems will strengthen biodiversity while supporting climate mitigation and adaptation, leveraging the ocean as our greatest ally to combat climate change. So you could see, for example, in Mexico, they're restoring hundreds of islands, eradicating invasive alien species, and then reviving wildlife, bringing back, for example, the majestic albatross to this community. Across Mozambique, Madagascar, and the Comoros, the communities are restoring mangroves and seagrasses. They're restoring forests. They're improving fisheries. They're creating new incomes through ecotourism. And there's a project in Spain's Mar Menor where wetlands are being rehabilitated, regenerative farming is actually being promoted. It's all bringing life and income back to a lagoon that had actually just recently been collapsed. So these are just examples. And I conclude by just saying these are inspiring examples among so many, because they show that protecting and restoring coastal ecosystems is one of the surest ways that we can truly safeguard our shared future, our future for communities, our future economies, and the ocean and its essential function to stabilize our climate. So I'm very pleased to be part of the beginning of this pavilion. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some remarks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gardner. And it's really all about creating this virtuous circle of protecting the ecosystem services, which are generating all sorts of benefits for communities and helping them thrive. And once they thrive, they are able to better invest in maintaining the quality and health of that ecosystem and its services. So trying to jumpstart that virtuous circle by engaging communities and making it clear what the benefits are is an important part of the solution. Thanks again. Our next speaker is going to be presenting via a pre-recorded video, Mr. Adam McCarthy, who is Chief Counsel at the Department of Foreign Affairs in Australia and also the co-chair of the BB&J Agreement PrepCom Commission. So the video will be rolling in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you to the organisers for the kind invitation to speak at this opening event for the COP30 Virtual Ocean Pavilion on the important linkage between the ocean and combating climate change. My name is Adam McCarthy, First Assistant Secretary and Chief Counsel for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australia. Australia is steadfast in our commitment to multilateralism, the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement as crucial frameworks for climate action, global economic growth, sustainable development, and avoiding dangerous climate impacts in our region. I am proud to speak today as one of the co-chairs of the UN Preparatory Commission for the High Seas Biodiversity Treaty, or BB&J Agreement, alongside my good friend, Ambassador Janine Coy-Felsen of Belize. The adoption by consensus of the BB&J Treaty by UN member states in 2023 was a triumph for ocean protection and multilateralism. On 19 September 2025, the international community reached another historic milestone. The 60th state ratified the treaty, triggering its entry into force on 17 January 2026 and marking a new chapter for global ocean governance. The High Seas Biodiversity Treaty implements the protections for the marine environment established under the UN Convention on the Law of the Seas, or UNCLOS, for areas beyond national jurisdiction. The high seas and the deep seabed, which represent nearly 2/3 of the world's oceans. Only about 1% of these oceans are currently protected, and international cooperation to protect and manage them is crucial. The ocean plays an essential role in addressing climate change, yet the ocean's ability to act as a climate mitigator has been weakened, including by marine pollution, biodiversity loss, and the adverse impacts of climate change. In the face of the threats facing our ocean, the treaty delivers real conservation benefits for areas beyond national jurisdiction by providing a mechanism to establish marine protected areas, putting in place a rigorous environmental impact assessment process for activities conducted in areas beyond national jurisdiction, and putting in place a regime to regulate the collection and use of marine genetic resources. The treaty will also increase opportunities for international collaboration, including on marine science. Importantly, the treaty will play a key role in achieving the global target to protect 30% of the world's coastal and marine areas by 2030, which comes from the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It is therefore an important time for international ocean governance, with clear momentum from states to improve marine conservation for the better of our planet. The swift entry into force of the agreement is a credit to states' continuing commitment to the treaty and represents a powerful demonstration of what we can achieve through multilateralism and by using international law to address major global challenges. We can only solve our biggest international problems by working together. Last year in April, the UN General Assembly established the BB&J Preparatory Commission, the PrepCom, to prepare for the treaty's entry into force and for the first BB&J Conference of Parties. The entry into force of the treaty sets a fast-paced schedule for the PrepCom to progress its work ahead of the first COP, which will be held by January 2027 at the latest. The work of the PrepCom is aimed at progressing the administrative, institutional, and governance arrangements that are essential for the treaty to effectively operate before the first COP. We want to assist the first COP by laying the foundations for infrastructure that is fit for purpose and ensures the full and effective implementation of the treaty. The more work that the PrepCom can progress, the better placed the COP will be to make the critical decisions necessary to kickstart the future operation of this treaty. We want the treaty up and running as early as possible to ensure states are able to meet their legal obligations, but also to start delivering tangible results for the conservation and sustainable use of the ocean. The Commission so far has made strong progress, and it's evident states want to continue the legacy of the treaty in demonstrating the value of multilateralism. As co-chairs, we've been very pleased to see states' continued commitment to and engagement with this work. We know that the protection of our ocean is one critical piece of a larger puzzle. Climate change is the greatest shared threat to all countries and requires the strongest of global action. Our collective contribution to the international system makes the world better and is key to tackling the challenges facing our planet. Australia is ambitious, constructive, and forward-looking on climate action, and we will work with others to rally global support for multilateralism and the Paris Agreement. I appreciate the shared commitment of those at this event to climate action and to a healthy and sustainable ocean. I wish you all the best and thank you for your attention.
All right, well, it's very clear that the BB&J is one of our greatest hopes for making very accelerated progress on the biodiversity conservation aspect of the ocean climate biodiversity nexus, and we need to do all we can to accelerate its implementation. Our next speaker is Dr. André Poljak, Director for Research and Innovation at the Instituto Nacional de Pesquisas Oceánicas of Brazil. He will speak to us today about sustainable ocean food. Dr. Poljak, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maria, and through which I salute all the speakers in this afternoon. It is my real pleasure to be amongst you for the launch of the Virtual Ocean Pavilion and an honor to represent also Brazil, the host country of COP30. Holding this COP in Belém, in the heart of the Amazon, is deeply meaningful for us. It's a place that reminds us how land, freshwater, and ocean systems are all connected, and how this connection shapes our livelihoods and our resilience. At the Instituto Nacional de Pesquisas Oceânicas, or simply INPO, we work at crossroads. INPO is what we call a boundary organization. We bridge science, policy, and society. Through a network of more than 1,400 ocean scientists across the continental Brazil, we bring together knowledge and infrastructure from marine, natural, and social sciences. Our goal is simple: to enhance social sciences in Brazil and make it useful and usable. Latinos are historically connected to land and sea. We are brought up thanks to traditional knowledge that teaches us much about our health and identity. As one of INPO's areas of work is fisheries and aquaculture research, we seek to combine research with the knowledge of local, traditional, and indigenous communities who have managed marine and coastal resources for generations. We believe that sustainable ocean food systems can only emerge through co-creation when knowledge systems work side by side. When we listen, learn, and innovate together, we co-produce solutions that are both evidence-based and locally relevant. Sustainable food systems also mean to improve aquaculture practices, reduce pollution, monitor coastal health, and design technologies that make production more efficient and just. This is essential as humanity confronts illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, one of the greatest threats to sustainable ocean food production. We already have important international frameworks, from the Fish Stock Agreement to the BBNJ Treaty, but change depends on our ability to implement these policies in real life and ever-changing scenarios. Science and technology are vital, improving traceability systems and satellite monitoring, and producing innovations that empower small-scale fishers and strengthen food security. As the Brazilian on this panel, I also want to emphasize how regional cooperation can amplify all of this. The motto of this COP is the indigenous word mutirão, which translates as working efficiently together for the community's sake. Across Latin America, our coasts and histories are intertwined. Sharing data, experiences, and innovations can help us build a sustainable and inclusive blue economy, one that values not only the productivity of the ocean, but also its cultural meaning, environmental protection, and social importance. Harnessing research and development for sustainable ocean food is not only a technical challenge, it's also a moral one. It means designing food systems that nourish both people and planet, strengthening governance against illegal and predatory practices, and mobilizing knowledge and innovation for a fair, regenerative blue economy. As we look toward COP30, we see a historic opportunity to put science and technology at the service of people and the planet, to align modern innovation with ancestral wisdom, and to make sustainability a lived reality for those who depend on the ocean most. With that, I conclude. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado. And let me just make a broad invitation to you all. Input together with international partners. We are hosting a BBNJ symposium next March. So please, if you all in Rio de Janeiro, you're almost welcome to join us next 10 to 12 for March. Thank you, Dr. Maria. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Polchak, and thank you for bringing the essential element of civil society and communities into this whole equation. It's so essential. As you say, we have to make the blue economy equitable and one that shares benefits much more broadly through society in order to achieve our goals. So I appreciate that intervention. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Mr. Camille Bourgeon, who is the technical officer at the Marine Environment Division of the IMO, and he will speak to us about decarbonizing the maritime industry. Camille, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and bom dia to all. It's a pleasure to join you from the International Maritime Organization in London. I'm not yet in Belém, but I'll be joining soon. IMO has always been committed to ocean action, and it's really a pleasure this year to join this virtual ocean pavilion. Congratulations again on the official opening of this virtual pavilion. Our Secretary General is in Belém, and he will update governments and civil society on recent action to address greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping. He will reiterate IMO's commitment to a safe and secure and efficient shipping on clean oceans, which is the core of our mandate since 1948. And to do so, IMO provides a platform for its 176 member states to develop global regulations. And these global regulations apply to a global sector, which is international shipping. And this includes developing a rule set to address emissions, including greenhouse gas emissions from this sector. Accelerating maritime decarbonization is really a global priority. Although international shipping carries over 80% of global trade and is really a backbone of the global economy, it also emits approximately 3% of total emissions. And there is really this awareness and the need to accelerate the decarbonization of this sector. There are good news. The first good news is that shipping decarbonization is technically feasible. There may have been questions a few years ago, But I think there is clarity now that it is technically feasible, although shipping is often considered a hard to abate sector. But the uptake of technology solutions as diverse as low carbon fuels, wind propulsion, carbon capture on board, etc., rely on massive investments, and both on land and on board. The high-level framework that was endorsed by all IMO member states is the 2023 IMO greenhouse gas strategy. It is still with us, and this includes a goal to reach net zero emissions by the international shipping sector by or around 2050. And we need to remember that achieving such targets and additionally targets for 2030 and 2040 for this sector requires early action, since those ships are assets with a lifespan of 10, 15 to sometimes 30 years plus in certain cases. That said, the transition has already started, and I was actually looking into the figures from new builds and shipyards, and they recently announced that 50% of the ordered ships, so ships under construction, are alternative fuel ready. So the transition has started, but regulatory clarity is needed for further investment to flow into the decarbonization of shipping, and also the global fuel transition must be managed carefully to avoid disruptions to the global trade. So in April this year, our membership, our member states approved the IMO Net Zero Framework, which introduces for the first time greenhouse gas emission limit and a mandatory economic contribution mechanism to support the global energy transition of shipping. And a lot of effort is put by the member states to further develop this framework and understand how this can apply in practice. And I can update you that a few weeks ago, during the Marine Environment Protection Committee, our member states decided to adjourn the discussion on the formal adoption of this new set of rules for a year. And this 1 year pause is now an opportunity to reflect on the best way forward, to renew a constructive engagement, consensus building process as well, bridge the remaining differences, address the concerns expressed by a number of member states, and I can really reassure you that the decarbonization of shipping really remains on top of the priorities of the organization. We're actually making progress in the meantime with the development of the necessary implementation provisions on also safety implications and impacts, in particular on the maritime workforce. The seafarers need to be trained to handle new fuels and shipboard technologies. IMO frameworks are already in place, and we're working to their further consistent implementation, in particular to enhance the energy efficiency of international shipping. Finally, IMO will continue to support an inclusive, just, and equitable transition for the shipping sector through a broad range of projects and programs. The IMO is aiming at ensuring that the energy transition of shipping reaches the entire maritime community, in particular in countries such as small island developing states, least developed countries where capacity and technical assistance needs are important. And we also acknowledge that shipping decarbonization can bring new opportunities, inclusiveness, and socio-economic development. So we remain committed to address these emissions through global rules, and I can reassure you that IMO will play its part in global mitigation efforts. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you all the best for the remaining proceedings.
Thank you so much, Camille. It's clear that this is a very necessary and ambitious undertaking and will require a lot of private sector investment. So the role of the IMO in policy coordination and helping create the policy framework for investment by the private sector is going to be essential. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A, I think. Our next speaker is Dr. Lisa Levin, the Distinguished Professor Emerita at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego. She's also the lead of the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative Working Group on Climate Change. Lisa will be speaking to us about the international cooperation to advance science in service of climate solutions from the surface to the deep sea ocean. Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, everybody, and thanks very much to the organizers for inviting me to represent the deep ocean here. As we know, our planet faces many different global crises: food, energy, waste, health, biodiversity, and of course, climate crises. And to address these global crises, we have moved into the ocean and increasingly into the deep ocean, so that we now have deep ocean fisheries. We are drilling oil and gas from the deep ocean. We are proposing to mine the deep seabed. We have waste entering and plastics entering the deep ocean. We are bioprospecting for resources in genetic resources in the deep ocean. Oh, I just lost my advance here. And of course, we are looking to conserve and preserve the deep ocean as well. To address climate change, we are considering putting carbon dioxide into the deep ocean, and we are looking at renewable energy sources that also will affect the deep ocean. And many of these activities in the deep sea increase the vulnerability of the carbon cycle and biodiversity, which we have been hearing and know are very intertwined, especially in the deep ocean. So for example, fisheries and bottom trawling, oil and gas drilling and spills, and even waste disposal all act to release carbon that is already sequestered and also to emit more carbon. Carbon dioxide disposal runs the risk of releasing new toxins, smothering the seafloor, leading to oxygen loss and altering food webs. And even offshore wind energy, which we very much need, has challenges with noise and entanglement of marine animals. And to address these challenges, we really need deep sea science. And we have many innovations in the now in the area of monitoring climate change and modeling and projecting future changes. We have Argo floats that can now measure and monitor the carbonate system and the carbon cycle. We have new technologies for characterizing biodiversity with eDNA. And we have a lot of underwater vehicles and new resources for exploring and finding new species and new ecosystems, many of which are still undescribed. We also have been turning to ocean acoustics, not just for mapping the seafloor. We've done mapped 30% so far, but we can now monitor the movements of animals with ocean acoustics. But to bring all this science to policy and to address climate change, we need a vehicle, and I'm part of two scientific networks that do this, the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative and the Deep Ocean Observing Strategy. And we bring these different scientific syntheses to policymakers. Of particular importance is the BBNJ agreement, which you have heard about from Adam and others. And this offers opportunities to manage genetic resources, many of which will represent climate change solutions, and to create climate smart MPAs, which offer climate refugia to animals in the deep sea, which offer migration corridors and can conserve ecosystems that are especially important for carbon sequestration. But beyond the BBNJ agreement, we need to be working with the Convention on Biological Diversity. We need to bring science to climate smart management of fisheries through the FAO. Science tells us we need to phase out deep ocean drilling and probably not begin deep seabed mining. We can bring science to the plastics treaty being negotiated under UNEP. We can bring science to the London Convention, which is regulating marine carbon dioxide removal. And of course, to the UNFCCC, we need to bring science to the search for ocean solutions, many of which I believe will turn out to be deep ocean solutions. So we have only one ocean. It's very interconnected, and we need the science to allow it to become a climate solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. You certainly covered the waterfront there from top to bottom, but particularly on the deep ocean side. And I think part of our Q&A will perhaps look at some ways to apply some of these potential solutions that may carry risks, but how to mitigate those risks and how we can use the information that we're generating from all these monitors to understand some of the risk and again, try to de-risk investments. We are now at the point of a Q&A. We are running behind, but I think we have a little bit of leeway. So I'm going to open the floor to questions. I have a couple I'd like to pose, but I want to look at the Q&A box, and I see that we have one from Jeannot Mendler de Suarez. Hello, Jeannot, it's been a while. And Jeannot's question has to do with developing an early warning system about the hazards that climate change poses to the ocean, and trying to keep our finger on the pulse of the ocean. And this is actually related to a question that I have. Can we develop some indicators in real time that are simple and accessible? They may be indices of more compound indicators, but will give us a sense in real time of the state of the ocean and whether or not our interventions are working. Because taking stock at, over the long term doesn't help us address the immediate crisis. So it's a question for scientists, but also people in communications. And I'd like to pose that as the first question to our panelists, whoever wants to start. Is there anyone who'd like to jump in here?
I could try, Maria. So good questions, great questions. And of course, science is really an integral part, including ocean observations and having early warning systems. So a couple of things come to my mind. The first is we have had the TTA indicators that have been recently refined. And those TTA indicators does have ocean-based indicators, which also includes observing the ocean in real time, including having more of the early warning systems. So I highly encourage, the work has now been published on the UNFCCC website, highly encouraging looking at that. And at CMA7, which is one of the sessions of the parties during COP30, these indicators, one of the suggestions from the co-facilitators and the participators, so from the Ocean Dialogue, is to look at the work of these experts and to ensure that these indicators on the ocean are included. And this does come from the outcome of the first global stocktake as well. And the second part to that is we do have the Earth Information Day, which begins in 1 hour. People can watch it virtually. And one of the topics is indeed on ocean observations. So thanks.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And I think Dr. Poljak has his hand up. Would you like to intervene here?
Very briefly, just to comment on, in addition to what Shazdeep has said, we have the ocean community, scientific community, has developed ocean essential variables. So we have identified the minimum variables that we need to collect, and we need to have long time series so we can understand the impacts in the climate and the climate impacts in the ocean. But in order to do that, we should be also implementing provisions that are all over the international agreements, not just the climate treaty, but also other treaties, including the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which is to balance capacities around the world so we can actually measure those variables in the same pace and with the same technology. So therefore, we are strongly trying to develop a low-cost development innovation sensors and instruments for the ocean, so we can have much cheaper instruments in the water, so we can understand better. So Lisa has perfectly shown all the technology which is available, and now we need to make it available and accessible, and data as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that is really the key. We've got the tools, we have the knowledge. It's now a question of converting those into accessible kinds of indicators that decision makers have access to, as well as the public. You know, creating a weather report on the state of the ocean so that civil society understands in real time where we are and what has to be done. Did anybody else want to, Lisa, did you want to chime in, or shall we go on to another question?
Actually, sure. I totally agree with what everybody said. The essential ocean variables are great, but we need to make them a part of all our multilateral negotiations, and we need to make them easier to measure and affordable and build capacity around the world. So I just want to really support that.
Thank you for that. I have another question, since I don't see any more in the Q&A, and that has to do with how you de-risk investments in either the blue economy in the deep sea, or basically trying to decarbonize or to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and whether burial is or other forms of removal are appropriate in the deep sea. We already know that there are many, many risks associated with it. One important one is lack of knowledge about unintended consequences and long-term impacts. But I'm wondering if there are ways to corral certain interventions so that they are under controlled conditions. And so one could have a permit or a license to do some initial proof of concept work in a situation that can be controlled, and the license would be contingent on demonstrating no adverse impact, so that you would have perhaps performance bonds associated with this, and only limit licenses according to progress made in demonstrating that no harm is going to be done, or no acceptable harm. Lisa, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, well, there are already permits for field trials, and some of those are actually associated with the sale of carbon credits already. I think it's probably premature in many cases, but the permitting requirements are largely based on water quality, and the community that studies ecosystems has yet to produce the criteria for environmental safety of these. I think this is an active area, you know, of development right now, but MCDR still has a long way to go. Another point has to do with additionality and the verification that carbon is being sequestered beyond the natural processes. And right now, natural variability is orders of magnitude larger than the amount of carbon that's being sequestered. So in MCDR, so there are real challenges that will be faced, especially as this moves outside of the estuaries and the coastal zones where many of the trials are happening now.
Okay. Any other viewpoints on this, or any other questions that panelists would like to raise in response to what you've heard so far? Okay, well, all right. With that, I think we can go back to some of this in the next Q&A, but for now, we've just caught up in terms of time. So why don't we move to the next session? And this will be on responsible ocean governance. And our first speaker is Ambassador Elvira Velázquez, who is the Secretary General of the Comisión Permanente del Pacífico Sur. And she will be speaking to us on the importance of regional cooperation in addressing climate change. Ambassador Velázquez, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hatsiolos. I greatly appreciate the kind invitation of the Global Ocean Forum to take part in this special panel at the Virtual Ocean Pavilion, held on the occasion of the COP30, which has begun in Belém, Brazil today. It is essential that we continue to highlight the ocean's vital role in the climate system and in climate action, and to express our deep concern about the adverse effects of climate change and ocean acidification on the marine environment and biodiversity. These impacts weaken the functioning of marine ecosystems and reduce the ocean's capacity to adapt and to mitigate future ones. That is why urgent action is imperative. Climate change is creating new complex challenge to ocean governance. It calls for an integrated, cooperative, and inclusive response and requires action at all levels of governance because its impacts are global, but the intensity and characteristic of the impacts varies at local or regional levels. Today, I would like to share how we are addressing this challenge in the Southeast Pacific region, which is home to unique biodiversity and one of the most productive, providing ecosystem services to our people and economies. But first, allow me a brief introduction to the regional marine organization that I have the honor to represent, the Permanent Commission for the South Pacific, CPPS, established in 1952. We are 73 years old. The CPPS brings together Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru with Panama, also participating in environmental matters through the Action Plan for the Protection of the Marine Environment and Coastal Areas of the Southeast Pacific. The CPPS mission is to facilitate, strengthen, and coordinate political, technical, and scientific cooperation among its members for the conservation and sustainable use of the ocean and its resources for the benefit of our people. To achieve both ocean sustainability and climate resilience, two sides of the same coin, the CPPS has adopted an integrated approach, mainstreaming climate change as one of the cross-cutting axes at its strategic plan 2022-2030. This strategic orientation will ensure that climate considerations will be embedded across legal and institutional CPPS frameworks, as well as at the regional policies and the scientific cooperation, the capacity building initiatives that we develop inside the CPPS to respond more effectively to current and emerging challenges. Let me mention two examples of this work. The first is the ERFEM program dedicated to study El Niño Southern Oscillation phenomenon. As we know, our region is highly vulnerable to this phenomenon, which has major environmental, social, and economic impact. Through this program and the CPPS participation in the Regional Alliance for Ocean Observation in the Southeast Pacific, known as GRASP, the CPPS has led regional monitoring of oceanographic and atmospheric conditions, generating key insights into El Niño dynamics. Both ERFEN and GRASP are multidisciplinary platforms involving leading regional marine scientific institutes in cooperation with international organizations and research centers. Their activities include annual research cruises and collaborative studies. Climate variability and climate change has been integrated to this program in order to better understand the links between these processes and the observed increase in frequency and intensity of El Niño events that exacerbate impacts on marine ecosystems and coastal communities. The second initiative is the Network of Marine and Coastal Protected Areas of the Southeast Pacific, known as RAMPAS. This network seeks to integrate around 120 protected areas from Panama to Chile to achieve ensuring preventive, remedial, and mitigation measures for fragile ecosystems that are vital allies in the fight against climate change, enhancing ecological connectivity and building resilience. This regional commitment declared at the third UN Ocean Conference contribute to achieve global goals assumed at 2030 agenda at Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and prepare us to face the challenge of implementation of the new BBNJ agreement. This process is also supported by Save the Blue 5 project, financed by German cooperation, which focuses on protecting 5 emblematic migratory species, whales, sea turtles, sharks, dolphins, and rays, that connect our system and represent biodiversity at our region. It also gives us the opportunity to join other efforts in the region, such as the Central America Thermal Dome, the Eastern Tropical Pacific Marine Corridor, and the protection of insular territories such as Galapagos and Rapa Nui. Those examples reflect the determination of the Southeast Pacific region to continue working together for a sustainable and resilient ocean, strengthening a responsible ocean governance based on science, cooperation, and inclusion to face the triple environmental crisis that the world is facing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Velasquez. It's very clear the challenges of really succeeding in getting states to cooperate are formidable. However, when it becomes clear that it's in their best interest to do so, it becomes far easier. The whole notion of upstream, downstream becomes part of the equation. Countries cannot do it alone, particularly those that may be downstream of pollution or those that are receiving, say, colonies of dispersants of biodiversity larvae, for instance. This is so important, this whole notion that we are one collective resource pool and we need to protect it together. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Philemon Manoni of the Pacific Ocean Commission. He is the commissioner of the Pacific Ocean, states, and his talk will be on responsible ocean governance with the example of the Pacific Islands Forum. I have to say that my one trip to the Cook Islands was during a Pacific Islands Forum, and it remains one of my most cherished memories. It was a fantastic event and just a marvelous example of cooperation of large ocean states and the need to band together to achieve regional goals. So, Dr. Manoni, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I must apologize because I am running between events, and the only place I can find is in a pavilion with a lot of noise outside. But certainly collaboration, regional cooperation is important, especially for us Pacific Island countries who are small developing states. And it is an honor to join you today on this event, speaking about managing the ocean and combating the challenges to the ocean. You know, somebody said to me that we as a human species haven't done our part very well in our cohabitation and living together with the ocean. We've done so bad that now we need treaties and conventions and rules to ensure the restoration of the health of the ocean. The ocean was doing quite well without us in the first place. So I think premising my statement, my comments along those lines, in the Pacific, as large oceanic states and territories, custodians of a huge portion, swath of the Earth's surface, and we place a great value, cultural, spiritual value on the ocean as our common heritage. The ocean is, of course, vital for our very own existence as well in the economic sense. But this ocean is growing, coming under growing pressure from a lot of stresses, climate-induced, and so forth, overfishing, biodiversity loss, and the triple crisis. So my role as the Pacific Ocean Commissioner is to bring together the high-level representation and voice that is needed in the region. We cannot do it alone as individual nations, but we must do it as a collective at the global level. These initiatives at the national, regional, and global levels in advocating for a secure future of our Pacific people based on sustainable management and the conservation of Pacific Ocean and its resources. Responsible management for me means a lot of good things. It is crucial because for us, the ocean not only represents a resource, but it is our home, our culture, our identity. It is the spiritual connection that ties us to our history, and that will provide the platform to guide our voyages into the future. For many of us, the ocean is the only sovereign wealth fund that we have. We don't have anything else other than the ocean. And we are determined to the best of our ability to protect this resource in a responsible way. But the truth is that we cannot do this alone, but we have to be strategic. We have to look at opportunities to succeed in strengthening governance of the ocean. We must seek the genuine partnerships. We must take the multilateral approach. We must engage in meaningful dialogue. This is especially critical at this time of our history, where multilateralism is increasingly coming under pressure. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea provides that framework, the Constitution of the Ocean, which all related activities should be carried out. It establishes the governance framework, the organizations, the agencies to help with governing our ocean. Despite the inherent shortcomings in the convention, there is no question that the 1982 Convention of the Law of the Sea perhaps is the only guardian that stands between order and the tragedy of the commons. So COP30 marks a decade of the Paris Agreement, which commits states to limiting global warming well below 2 degrees Celsius or below 1.5 degrees pre-industrial levels. The most critical win for the ocean, and indeed for the Pacific, is to keep the 1.5 goal alive. Without that, we can't talk ocean anymore. Results will be catastrophic. If we not limit global warming to this target through the urgent acceleration of climate action, the results will truly be catastrophic. For a long time, the ocean and climate had sat in different silos, despite the inextricable linkages between the two systems. The ocean continues to struggle to find a rightful place in the climate process. But of course, we acknowledge the work to date on the need and the proposal to mainstream and embed ocean-based solutions in nationally determined contributions. Also looking at the work that is ongoing under the climate and ocean dialogue process. But the question is this enough? The current process is doing justice to the critical importance of the ocean and climate nexus. With 10 years of the Paris Agreement in the rearview mirror, perhaps it's time to look at really concrete solutions in terms of bringing in the ocean to the discussion. Maybe in the future, and some of the things that the Pacific have been talking about on bringing the ocean to the formal discussions. The adoption of the BBNJ agreement also now marks a new era for ocean governance, one that is rooted in inclusivity, equity, and shared responsibility. This landmark agreement provides mechanisms to strengthen the important aspects of the ocean climate nexus, intended to tear down these silos and to bridge the gap that has for far too long kept these interconnected systems in silos. And I'd like to say that the BBNJ agreement is indeed a climate agreement if you look at the intended outcomes of the agreement, although it focuses on biodiversity in the ABNJ. This treaty must have universal application. So effective governance requires cooperation and coordination at all levels, international, intergovernmental, and regional. We must consider our multilateral environments together as a whole. We in the Pacific can't afford to lose this because we need the multilateral system to work. We are not able to address our concerns as individual states or even as a region in the global context. So we are all for multilateralism. Look at the example set in the fast-paced moving on the accession and the ratification of the BBNJ agreement. We want to see this kind of action, of coming together by the global community, understanding that from our perspective in the Pacific solutions are indeed global solutions. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share some perspectives with you. My apologies for the noise, and my battery is about to go off because
Well, thank you so much, Dr.
this
Benoni.
panels have not, yes. But anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity.
We didn't pick up any noise at all. And it's very clear that the Pacific Islands are at the front lines of climate change. I mean, I love this tagline that the ocean is the sovereign wealth fund of the Pacific Island nations. And it's so very clear that multilateralism is essential to solving the problems that confront these island states. And there are many lessons to be learned from the cooperation, collaboration, and regional partnerships that the Pacific Island states have shown in fisheries management. I think we can take some really great lessons about how coming together out of necessity has generated solutions out of the box. And we need to look to that again in terms of your indigenous knowledge and your cultural traditions of cooperation. So our next speaker, following with this notion of reaching out to perhaps underrepresented groups, for instance, youth, and the notion that good governance needs to be inclusive of all levels of society. We have Esther Maina, the country coordinator for the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network. She'll be speaking to us about engaging youth in biodiversity conservation, policy, and advocacy. Esther, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maria. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, our moderators, our fellow panelists, and everybody joining us today. I want to first applaud the Global Ocean Forum for leading in convening the Virtual Ocean Pavilion, and also this timely dialogue on how we can leverage the ocean as our greatest ally in combating climate change. And for me, I think responsible ocean governance is, first of all, recognizing the ocean as this life support system that it is, and the fact that the ocean cannot be an ally against the climate crisis when empty. Sometimes we just talk about an ocean without bearing in mind that it can only do these functions that it is supposed to deliver when it is healthy, thriving, and also blooming with life in all its forms. And so it is recognized that the ocean harbors 80% of all life on Earth. It also generates the oxygen that we breathe, much of it, and regulating the planet's climate. And for millions of people, including coastal communities in my own country, Kenya, it is a source of food, livelihoods, and also cultural identity and well-being. Globally, through the blue carbon ecosystems, the ocean has been able to sequester carbon and also a lot of the heat that is generated through human activities, regulating global warming. That is one of the challenges that we're having to grapple with currently. And I think without the ocean, this climate crisis would have been much worse than we are experiencing. So the ocean is not just a victim, but as also a frontline defender in maintaining the planetary balance that we seek to achieve. And as Dr. Philemon has mentioned, is that the ocean is still fighting for its place, including global climate discussions. And our work, therefore, remains in championing for the inclusion of the ocean and its potential as this greatest ally to be harnessed through policy, financing, and also governance. And so with this topic that I have been tasked to speak about is also something that is so close to my heart and so dear through the work that we've been doing in Kenya through the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network. And I think to unlock the full potential of the ocean as a climate ally is first we must strengthen multilateral cooperation through inclusive and intergenerational collaborations. The Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network embodies this principle by connecting young people across ecosystems from both terrestrial ecosystems and also marine ecosystems, because these are ecosystems that are really interconnected to participate in both national and international policy formulation, advocacy, and also implementation. Dr. Maria has mentioned about the biodiversity arena. And so since 2017, we have been active in engaging young people in negotiations under the Convention on Biological Diversity through nationwide consultations, some of which generated priorities that influenced and shaped the now Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We've been also keen to engage the Kenyan government through the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change on NBSAP's revision and also their implementation. And through these avenues, we've been able to enhance the capacity of young people in policy engagement at the biodiversity COPs, lobbying for the inclusion of youth-focused targets and indicators, and also youth-focused languages, not just in the biodiversity space, but also in the climate arena to enhance the synergies between the different conventions. And as such, to truly leverage the ocean as a climate ally, we must first reimagine multilateralism as that inclusive and intergenerational space. And this means ensuring that every decision from national commitments to global frameworks can be able to integrate the voices of those at the grassroots, those at the front lines of driving action, and those that are also most dependent on healthy marine ecosystems. And at the same time, I think this is an opportunity to for it to open doors to the wider community, the private sector, philanthropic organizations, and also local partners, and actively engaging them and helping them understand the role that they have to play in terms of supporting policy implementation and enhancing inclusive action. And so the ocean economy is not only a source of climate solutions, but also a space for investing in regeneration for the future. Our mangrove restoration project in Kwale County in Kenya, for instance, is a youth-led and community-centered initiative that seeks to restore 500 hectares of degraded mangrove areas by the year 2030 to reduce biodiversity loss and also enhance climate resilience in Kenya's south coast. And this is anchored on implementing the biodiversity and climate goals. And this project, having secured financing through the Inclusive Global Environment Facility Challenge program, is an example of a project that we can see that is both bankable and also beneficial to nature and people. However, such initiatives also need frameworks that de-risk investments. That is something that has been mentioned. Efforts that advance the need to close the climate and biodiversity financing gaps, valuing ecosystem services, and also recognizing the contributions of youth and local communities as legitimate actors in climate action. And looking ahead, we are particularly excited that Kenya is going to be hosting our ocean conference, and I look forward to welcoming you all in Kenya. This is the first time that this global event is going to be held on African soil, and this presents an opportunity that is very valuable in uniting diverse stakeholders to help us in continuing to address the triple planetary crisis, and also an opportunity that provides a platform to continue showcasing the youth-led action on the ocean, and also connecting global climate dialogues with local realities. And in closing, I would say that young people bring the creativity, energy, and innovations that are needed and are essential in terms of accelerating progress towards SDG 14, as well as the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. And to unlock the potential of young people, They must be supported with the much needed technical, financial, and also capacity building resources that are going to allow them to continue scaling their impact. When young people are given the tools and trust, they will deliver the much needed transformative action from science, policy to action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther. It's clear that with you as the leader of the Youth Biodiversity Network, there are all sorts of things that are going to be possible. You speak with such passion and dedication. And this notion of intergenerational collaboration is so important. We're seeing movements among youth around the world holding their own countries accountable for climate action. And I can see that your group in Kenya has all sorts of prospects for making real progress on this, particularly with you in the lead. Thanks again for your intervention. Now, we're going to shift gears slightly to talk about a similar kind of topic, which is engaging coastal communities. So it's outreach and capacity building, which is something that Esther mentioned and actually emphasized the need for in addition to finance. Our first speaker in this series is Miss Jo Ruxton, who is a filmmaker and the founder of Ocean Generation. She's going to be talking to us about the power of film to highlight people's connection to the ocean. Jo?
Thank you so much. And thanks also to Global Ocean Forum for inviting me here. I have to say, having listened to the other panelists, I am feeling quite humble, but I will press on. So calling the ocean our greatest ally in combating climate change is no exaggeration. And that phrase captures the essence of our work at Ocean Generation. It summarizes an incredibly complex reality in the simplest possible way. These days, the more I read scientific papers, the more I wonder if some scientists are on a mission to out-science each other. I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek and with apologies to all those brilliant scientists who play such a vital role, but I do admit that I sometimes find the science speak so difficult to unravel that its significance to what matters now is becoming hard to interpret, and I say this as someone with a science degree. It's no wonder so many people believe that the global environmental crises should be left to those scientists and to the policymakers who attend events like this COP to discuss and hopefully somehow to resolve. But the truth is, everyone needs to be part of this conversation, and to make that possible, ocean literacy must become a vital component of our education systems. Right now, we're playing catch up. Children are still being taught that all of our oxygen comes from trees and that forests absorb all of the CO2 we produce. And that was my understanding as well, decades ago when I was at school learning about photosynthesis. Nobody told us about the ocean's role in this equation. Even today, while we're waking up to this fact, the ocean's other critical function, absorbing heat, rarely gets a mention. Just imagine if we had all grown up knowing these simple truths. It would surely be in our DNA to protect the ocean. And after all, as so many people have mentioned, it is our life support system. At Ocean Generation, our journey began with a film. I was working at the BBC on underwater wildlife documentaries, and I realized we weren't telling the real stories about our ocean. For example, on location during the filming of the first Blue Planet series, we had to frame out reality. Plastic on beaches where turtles nested, debris in waters where whales were socializing, and bleached corals were hidden from view. Top ocean predators feeding on massive bait balls looked abundant, but our crews often returned to the same location for 2 or 3 years to capture those sequences. And I believed that public perception of ocean health was being skewed. When I suggested adding conservation messages to the films I was involved with, the response was always, our audiences won't be interested in that. So I packed up my conservation heart and I left the BBC. Our film, A Plastic Ocean, proved that audiences are hungry for information. Once people know there's an issue, they care and they act. And film is a powerful tool to transform even a seemingly dull topic like plastic pollution, for example, into compelling visuals and stories. Today, our focus has expanded to other ocean challenges, And sadly now the media often sensationalizes environmental issues, fueling eco-anxiety and making people feel that there's no point trying to do anything. It's kind of gone the other way. At Ocean Generation, we take the scientific findings and we translate them into engaging content and practical actions that anyone can adopt. And do check out our socials, and I'm not taking any credit for them. I have incredible colleagues who turn even my ordinary days into extraordinary learning experiences. And even after 40 years of diving around the world, I haven't matched them, not yet anyway. Understanding that the ocean is our life support system, no matter how far we live from the coast, is one of the most important messages we can share. I once spoke at a conference in Kazakhstan, and I was asked, why should I care about the ocean? We don't even have a coastline. My answer about every second breath coming from the ocean was met with surprise and delight. That will be my take-home fact from this entire conference, he replied, and I hope he still talks to others about it. I could have said so much more about our rivers and waterways being our direct link to the ocean, but for him, that simple connection was enough. When I'm on panels like this, I'm often asked, do you still have hope? And my answer is absolutely I do. The fact that many of our world leaders are gathering to discuss the planet's health and that international ocean conferences happen every year now still amazes me, because I remember when it wasn't like this. In 1992, I was working for WWF in Hong Kong while the Rio Summit was taking place. When the Rio Declaration was signed by more than 175 countries, I was stunned. Finally, something was being done on a global scale. But today we expect far more cooperation and planning from our leaders. And yes, there are setbacks. Not everyone shares the same vision, but there are enough of us determined to make change happen, spreading awareness and driving behavior change at every level. The people I meet through my work, on my travels and at home, through their unwavering determination, prove to me that the combination of human spirit and nature's resilience can change everything, and that gives me all the hope I need.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was really inspirational, and absolutely no need to apologize. That was just a great reminder to us of how communicating all of the information in a way that touches people is so essential to actually generating their participation and desire to engage. We shouldn't feel that we need to dumb down the information at all. We need to engage people in a very forthright and honest way. So thank you for that. Our next speaker is Dr. Ruth Bumfrey, who is the Chief Executive of Lloyd's Register Foundation. She will be speaking on engaging the business community and those on the front lines of climate change to enhance resilience. Dr. Bumfrey?
Thank you, Maria. It's lovely to be here and a real pleasure to speak alongside Joe and Maria Jose in this session and also our other speakers. So I'm Ruth Bumfrey. I'm the Chief Executive of Lloyd's Register Foundation, and we're a global charity with a mission to engineer a safer world. Now, we already know that the oceans are already one of the most dangerous places to work, and the oceans are also a workplace which are changing quickly in response to climate. At the ports, we see investments in the fuel and energy transition, and Camille has already mentioned the decarbonisation of shipping, but ships will also be a major international vector of energy and offshore renewables and ocean infrastructures, and will underpin new energy systems. As Esther has said, there's also a new generation of ocean workers that need the economic opportunities that the ocean brings. With the oceans and coastlines feeling the strong effects of climate change already, rapid climate adaptation is also needed to protect people and livelihoods. Our World Risk Poll shows that 1 in 3 ocean workers have already been harmed by severe weather events, and that ocean workers are more than twice as likely as others to see climate change as a severe threat. So thinking about those presidency priorities, multilateralism is as important to the private sector as to anyone else. The private sector needs to be strong and to show leadership. And we recognise that sustainable solutions must be built on decent work and an economy which brings benefit to people's lives. That is why we partner with the United Nations Global Compact, which is the global network of businesses committed to the SDGs. Together with the UN Global Compact, we have established a network of ocean centres to support countries with fast-growing ocean economies and to support them in safe and sustainable growth. Hosted by the local networks and funded by the Foundation, they are active here in Brazil and also in Bangladesh, Ghana, India, Indonesia, Kenya and the Philippines, and they will grow. The second presidential priority is about connecting climate to daily lives. And our ocean centres are in locations where the sea is a workplace. And with that comes local knowledge and identity. Those who live and work by the ocean understand and are affected by climate change the most. I've already said that they're most likely to experience severe weather and also to see climate change as a severe threat, which makes ocean workers really at the front line of climate change. The ocean centres are bringing together businesses, communities, researchers and local leaders with policymakers, financiers and governments to identify priority actions and investments for safe and sustainable economic growth around the ocean. So far, across the 7 ocean centres, there are already 200 official members, all stakeholders in the ocean economy, including 40 here in Brazil. And collectively, more than 330 people across the 7 countries have joined the Ocean Centre workshops. The ocean centres represent a promise to the people whose lives are most affected by climate transitions to share knowledge across borders and to have their local voices heard and support them in the changes they want to make and help them in securing the investments that they need to make those changes. So to address the third presidential priority, how will we accelerate the change? We'll do this through the wide-scale implementation of technical standards for safe and sustainable fuel transitions, for adaptation to climate impacts on, at and in the oceans, and for nature-positive engineering, and also for new approaches to safety and ocean engineering education. We will accelerate change by connecting knowledge between peoples and countries and by giving a voice to those who are often overlooked. The ocean economy is growing fast, and collaboration and cooperation with shared visions will accelerate investment and standards. To make a lasting change and a just transition, we must be locally led by the needs and concerns of the frontline ocean workers in the climate emergency, and we must support local ocean workers to develop and enjoy safe, sustainable, and decent work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. It was great to hear what your organization is doing for frontline workers who are the ones who are most susceptible to and most knowledgeable about the ocean, its impacts and its benefits, and trying to mobilize their engagement and their support is essential. And this will enter into our conversation a little bit about generating more investment by the private sector. And by that, I mean the private sector that has the resources to really accelerate this transition. So this brings us to now our final speaker, Dr. Maria Jose Gonzalez Bernat, who is the director of the Ocean Program, the Inter-American Association for Environmental Defense, AIDA. And Maria Jose will speak to us about capacity building and outreach to coastal communities in Latin America, empowering ocean action for climate resilience. Dr. Gonzalez Bernat, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, gracias. Thank you so much for the invitation. I feel really honored and humbled to be part of this amazing panel and to share this inciting and exciting topic, about our ocean and climate. So I just wanted to thank the Maria for being the presenter here, and also to the Global Ocean Forum and the Plymouth Marine Laboratory for inviting us and for organizing this event. Just wanted to highlight that in AIDA, our mission is basically to protect the right to a healthy environment in Latin America. So that's basically what we do from different perspectives, and I'm going to be specifically speaking about our oceans. So it is important to highlight that when we talk about the ocean, it is our greatest ally in combating climate change. We are also talking about millions of people across Latin America who depend on it for food, for livelihood, for identity, for protection. We're talking about from mangroves of Ecuador to the coral reefs of the Caribbean, the ocean sustains life, but it also works on the frontline defense of our most powerful climate solutions. So keeping in mind the COP30 President's 3 priorities, which are strengthening multilateralism, connecting the climate regime to people's daily lives, and accelerating climate implementation, I want to focus on 3 main aspects. The first one is in Latin America, has an extraordinary opportunity to lead the regional ocean cooperation by connecting national efforts under the Paris Agreement with frameworks like the Santiago Declaration and the Regional Seas Convention, as we had heard. Capacity building here means not only training, but empowering communities and local governments to co-design adaptation and mitigation strategies, from restoring blue carbon ecosystems such as mangroves and seagrasses to developing resilient and sustainable fisheries, and of course, local governance as pillars for regional cooperation. So we have seen this work in Costa Rica and in Colombia, where community-based marine protected areas have become living laboratories for regional learning. We have also seen this initiative supported by organizations like the Inter-American Development Bank or regional ocean alliances that are creating south to south cooperation platforms that strengthen both science and diplomacy. The other aspect is, of course, climate policies often feel distant from our shorelines, where change happens fast. So our outreach work in Latin America shows that when local fishers, women's cooperatives, and youth networks are directly involved, climate solutions take root. Some examples: mangrove restoration in Mexico and in El Salvador, where communities are paid for ecosystem services and trained in monitoring carbon sequestration. We're also talking about citizen science networks in Chile and Peru, where local observers collect ocean data that informs national adaptation plans, and of course, education and storytelling, particularly through youth ocean literacy programs that are bridging the gap between science and society. So these efforts make the ocean climate connection real, not from an abstract concept, but a part of our daily life, our livelihoods, and culture. And the third one is that we definitely must move from pilot projects to systemic programs that integrate capacity building into nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, and climate resilient plans. This means integrating ocean-based solutions like blue carbon, coastal protection, and sustainable aquaculture into national climate strategies. Also investing in local trainings and technical assistance for small-scale fisheries and coastal adaptation projects, and also leveraging public-private partnerships that bring innovation and finance to community-led solutions. The private sector in Latin America is already responding, some examples through sustainable seafood value chains and blue finance mechanisms, but we need stronger enabling frameworks from governments and multilateral institutions. So in short, building capacity and outreach in coastal communities is not just about skills, it's about agency. If we can equip Latin America's coastal populations to act as custodians of ocean-based climate solutions, we will accelerate both resilience and mitigation, advancing all 3 of the COP's President priorities. So a healthy living ocean, it's not just part of the solution, it's the foundation of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria Jose. I love your closing statement that it's not just part of the solution, it's the absolute foundation. It's critical to achieving the kind of transformation that we want to bend the curve of emissions and really be able to have hope for a future that is livable for ourselves and our children and future generations. So with that, we have ended the formal presentation session, and now we're going to have some Q&A. I want to invite our panelists to ask questions as well. We have one question, as far as I can tell, in the Q&A. But before we go to that, are there any issues that panelists would like to respond to? I have a couple of questions in my pocket, but I want to give the panel a chance to raise some questions and start a bit of a discussion. We have maybe 5 minutes for this. So do I see a show of hands or anybody who's interested in jumping in at this point? Okay, well, if not, then let me ask about how we, in terms of governance and engaging civil society, accountability and voice and agency are so very important. And I think this particular COP is going to be stressing accountability as something, particularly with the global stock take, to convince countries that everyone needs to be pulling their weight. There is a methodology to demonstrate progress. And there is a bit also of this sort of, I don't like to say naming and shaming, but it's very important to countries that are actually pulling their weight to be recognized for that. And so the whole idea of transparency and accountability is really important. And making sure that countries and institutions, the multilateral agencies in particular, are really aligned in terms of their policy and investments with the Paris Agreement. People have brought up the idea that multilateralism is so important in terms of the regional cooperation that's required, but also in terms of really using the resources that multilateral bodies have to push the Paris Agreement agenda forward, and certainly engaging people who are advocates of ocean health in the conversation and in the action. So any comments about the need for greater transparency or how this can play into the acceleration of investments that are needed? Well, I don't see anybody who has comments about that. We'll just take it as agreement, I suppose. Another question that I had was had to do with the whole notion of rights-based community engagement. And this is something that at the World Bank, we spend a lot of time focusing on, particularly with respect to fisheries. Communities need to feel that they have a stake in the long-term future of protecting resources. Otherwise, it becomes a race to the bottom, as we know. And rights-based approaches to fisheries and marine protected areas has actually been a great way to really engage communities over the long term. The notion that it's in your backyard, it's the only area that you have exclusive rights to it. If you don't protect and nurture it, your future is compromised. In some ways, that whole notion of putting a long-term stake into the equation is something that we perhaps want to think about for private investors with the blue economy. And it does relate a bit to the question that's in our chat, the Q&A, which says, how do you mobilize resilience investments that are protected with parametric insurance and strengthened with local anticipatory action plans? Well, the relationship there is that you have insurance policies in place that will pay into a local pool, so that if something happens, some catastrophe happens, countries who are suffering the worst impacts are going to be able to have some support and benefit from that. But the notion of insurance bonds is something that perhaps we need to think about, and having the private sector feel vested over the long term. They can't just come in, develop, and leave. They need to demonstrate a long-term commitment, and so they would be responsible over the long term for performing well and having to put up bonds to guarantee that performance. I see that there is another question, and this one is directed to Maria Jose. And it says, I am from Ecuador, part of a network of young ocean leaders. I'd like to ask where I can find more information about AIDA's initiatives or projects that I could join related to ocean issues in Ecuador. So Maria Jose, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, I was actually typing my answer, but
Oh,
happy to send her to our website. And I'm also more than happy to share my email with Abigail so that she can send me an email and have like more one-on-one conversation. So thank you for your question. I'll write down my answer.
Great. Any other responses? Yeah, Dr. Bumfrey, please.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond. I think it was two ideas that you just had about the private sector and those
Sure.
long-term investments. Now, what we see is really important is that economic opportunity is felt by the local communities, and felt by local businesses. And of course, then people will be in it for the long term. But what needs to mobilize is a local vision for the local economy, for the local engagement, which is then an investable proposition. Because we know the problems of multilateralism. We know that there are ups and downs, but at the end of the day, we are dependent on business. We're dependent on people doing jobs in order to provide us with the things that we need every day. And if those businesses can't be sustainable, then we're all in really big trouble. It's great that they're coordinated, but so I guess my response is that long-termism will come with localism. Because you won't have people coming in and then withdrawing. It has to be owned and led by local stakeholders, including, as Esther said, the young people. It has to be that next generation of workers.
And it has to be perceived as profitable and sustainable. I mean, it has to meet the triple bottom line of inclusion, socially sustainable, environmentally sustainable, and financially sustainable. Ambassador Vasquez, please. And unmute.
Thank you very much. Yes, regarding the participation of the local communities, I mean, this is very important that they participate since the beginning of the project. So in that case, the tool that means the marine sea planning, for example, is very important to include them in the development of the projects, but also to include them in the control of how the policy that is established will be or has been implemented. So this is a really big contribution also to accountability and the transparency of how the resources have been invested on that project, and also how efficient would be the policy that has been developed based on that project. And regarding the mechanisms or the systems that could be used in order to contribute, to give security to investment in areas of El Niño, for example. I think, that will be a big ambition, but still we need to integrate it better, the information we have, because in the case of El Niño, we can anticipate El Niño, but it's very difficult to anticipate the effects of El Niño, for example. And then we also have the new, this climate change variable that need to be integrated in this database that will be the basis for take decisions on the subject. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Velasquez. Are there any other interventions that people would like to make? If not, I think we should wrap up. I'm sorry, was there one?
Me, Maria Jose.
Maria Jose, sorry.
Sorry, I think my hand is a bit blurry there.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to close with some specific remarks. I think it's very important to strengthen data accessibility and open reporting. I think already Dr. Lisa Levine mentioned this quite a bit, but I think it's very important to have open access platforms to science and also community-based monitoring systems. The other one is integrate ocean actions into nationally determined contributions. It's something that we have seen in several countries in Latin America that is not the case. So it is key to include this as well. And of course, strengthen institutional accountability and support the government as well, because we understand that there's a lot of need and capacity needs, institutional, money, finance. So it's also important that organizations focus on that as well. And of course, include local communities and other stakeholders into this reporting and into this construction, because if we don't include these other stakeholders and sectors and communities, I don't think we're moving towards the right way. So just wanted to close with that. Maria, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If there are no further interventions, let me first thank all of the panelists for fantastic contributions to this discussion. It was wide-ranging, it was broad, it was deep, it was stimulating. I think we all got inspired from one another's talks. And certainly the road ahead is full of challenges, but there are great opportunities to make this, to reset the course of climate action with the ocean at the center, so that we can accelerate change and really look forward to a livable future for ourselves and our children. So thank you all so much, and I hope you'll continue to participate in the pavilion and in whatever other webinars and fora are available either virtually or in person. A big, big thanks to everyone. And let me ask Miriam to make a final. Miriam, would you like to intervene?
Thank you, Maria. Actually, I just wanted to give an opportunity for Esther to say something because she raised her hand. Esther, yours is last.
Okay.
Go ahead, Esther.
Sorry. So I just wanted to I just add on to something with regards to the work that we've been doing in terms of enhancing that long-term stewardship and maintenance for the ocean economy. In terms of mangrove restoration, we've realized that this is an aspect that is long-term and needs long-term care, and also in the aspects of monitoring and also maintenance and protection against encroachment, because we also need to balance between the fact that the mangroves are going to be cut down. There will be instances when fisher folk want to uproot the mangroves to get bait for the fish. So I think in the context of the private sector and also in terms of funders, there's the need to take into account livelihood programs that are going to provide incentives for communities to both stay engaged in such projects beyond the project cycle, as well as provide them with livelihood options that are going to make sure that they can continue safeguarding ecosystems, these ecosystems. And these include, we've had instances where we have funders that fund nature-based enterprises like honey production, others like community-based mangrove nurseries, and also eco-based to ecotourism. So I think such continuity reduces the burden of funders having to be there funding recurring maintenance of such projects and ensuring that ecosystem integrity is sustainable over the decades. I'm so sorry for having to come back when we have closed. So sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for those closing remarks, Esther. It's so clear that the potential for communities, and particularly youth, to be engaged. There's so much energy and, as I say, desire and potential, but we need to unlock it, and that comes with investing in their capacity, in providing the financing required, providing the governance frameworks, the agency, the accountability, the access. So all of these things are key, but when we provide that, we can unleash a very powerful force for ocean conservation and sustainable use. All right, well, we've reached beyond our time. Thanks again to the panel. It was a wonderful session, and I really appreciate all of your involvement. Thank you so much.